Okay, so you want to own a cruise ship. You've seen the brochures, you've watched the videos, thousands of people paying $2,000, $3,000, sometimes $10,000 per person per week just to float around the ocean in what is essentially a floating five-star hotel that you never have to unpack for. The buffet never closes, the bars never close, the casino never closes, the spa books solid 6 months in advance. And you own all of it. Every drink, every cabin, every specialty restaurant with the $30 wagyu steak, every excursion to every island, every photograph the ship's photographer snaps of families on the gangway. You own the revenue from every single one of those things. You start running the numbers on a napkin, and your hand starts shaking.
A large cruise ship carries 4,000 passengers. Average spend per passenger, including the ticket, the drinks package, the excursions, the gambling, the spa, the specialty dining, around $2,000 per week. 4,000 passengers, $2,000 each, every single week, 52 weeks a year. That's over $400 million a year from one ship. You put down the napkin, you call your banker, you tell him you want to buy a cruise ship, and that's when the education begins. The ship you're imagining, the big one, the kind with a surf simulator on the top deck and a go-kart track and a Broadway theater, costs between $1 and $2 billion to build. That's not a typo. $1 billion for a ship. The largest ships in the world, Royal Caribbean's Icon-class vessels, cost around $2 billion each.
Okay, you're rich. You can handle that. You take out the loan. Now you need a crew. A large cruise ship carries between 1,500 and 2,000 crew members to serve 4,000 passengers. That's one crew member for every 2 guests, around the clock, 7 days a week. The crew works contracts of 6 to 9 months without going home. They earn between $600 and $2,000 a month, depending on their role. The officers earn more, the cabin stewards earn less, and almost everyone's income is partly structured around passenger tips, which is a business model you'll want to examine carefully later. Your crew payroll is somewhere between $15 and $30 million a month. But the crew is not your biggest operating cost. Not even close. Fuel is. A large cruise ship burns between 100 and 250 tons of marine fuel per day. Per day! At current fuel prices, that's somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000 per day. That's not the yearly bill. That's Tuesday. Your annual fuel cost for a single ship is somewhere between $50 million and $500 million, depending on the size of the vessel, the routes it sails, and the price of oil on any given morning. You call your banker back. He doesn't answer. Here's where the cruise industry's real secret starts to reveal itself. Because these companies are not actually in the business you think they're in. Carnival Corporation, the largest cruise company in the world, owning brands like Carnival, Princess, Holland America, Costa, and Cunard, carries around 13 million passengers a year across its fleet. In 2023, it posted revenue of $21 billion. But the ticket prices? The ticket prices are almost irrelevant. Cruise lines have spent decades figuring out that the ticket is not the product. The ticket is the door. Once you're through the door, floating in the middle of the ocean with nowhere else to go and nothing else to spend your money on, that's when the real business starts. The drinks. A cruise ship with 4,000 passengers can generate $5 to $10 million in bar revenue per week. Per week! The average cruiser spends over $50 per day on drinks alone, more than many people spend on food at home. And the margins on a gin and tonic poured at sea are extraordinary because there is no competition. There is no bar down the street. There is no Uber to take you somewhere cheaper. You are on a ship. You either buy the drink or you don't. The casino. A mid-sized cruise ship casino generates between $1 and $3 million per week.
Passengers who would never walk into a casino on land because it feels too serious, too intimidating, too committed, will happily lose $200 at a blackjack table when they're slightly sunburned and 3 drinks deep and the ship is rocking gently and everyone around them is on holiday. The psychological environment of a cruise ship is almost perfectly engineered for spending money.
The excursions. The ship docks in Cozumel or Dubrovnik or Santorini, and thousands of passengers want to do something. The cruise line sells them snorkeling trips, wine tours, city walks, jeep safaris. The markup is enormous. Passengers pay $200 for an excursion that the ship buys from a local operator for $40. The ship keeps the difference. On a full sailing with 4,000 passengers, excursion revenue can exceed $1 million in a single port day. The spa, the shops, the art auctions, and yes, cruise ships run actual art auctions at sea, selling paintings to passengers who are relaxed and suggestible and have a credit card that won't feel real until they get home. The photography packages, the specialty restaurants, the internet packages charged by the minute. In a world where passengers are conditioned to pay for Wi-Fi, what they'd never pay for it on land. Every single one of these things exists because once you are on that ship, you are a captive audience with disposable income and nowhere else to be.
You start to understand why the brochure keeps the ticket price so low. Now, here's the part of the story where it gets complicated. In 2020, the entire cruise industry didn't just have a bad quarter. It didn't just lose money. It ceased to exist. COVID-19 shut down global cruising for 15 months. Every ship in every fleet anchored offshore or docked in ports and sat there, empty, still burning through maintenance costs, still paying skeleton crews, still making loan payments on billion-dollar vessels that were producing zero revenue. Carnival Corporation lost over $10 billion across 2020 and 2021. Royal Caribbean lost nearly $6 billion. Norwegian lost $4 billion. They didn't go bankrupt, mostly because governments and banks couldn't afford to, but they came close enough that their CFOs aged a decade in 18 months. And the passengers? Most of them got vouchers. Not refunds. Vouchers. Come back later. Come back when it's safe. Come back and spend your money again.
Here's the astonishing part. They came back. The moment cruising reopened, bookings surged to record highs. In 2023, the industry carried more passengers than it ever had in its history. Royal Caribbean posted record profits. Carnival posted record profits. Norwegian posted record profits. The people who had been given vouchers used them. The people who'd watched cruise ships become COVID hotspots on the evening news apparently decided they'd take that risk because the alternative was not being on a cruise ship, and they'd tried that for 18 months and hated it. The loyalty of cruise passengers is one of the strangest phenomena in consumer behavior. Once someone goes on one cruise, the likelihood they'll go on another is around 60%. Not because every cruise is perfect. The food is often mediocre, the pools are crowded, the ports are tourist traps, and you are at all times surrounded by several thousand strangers. But because the experience of being cut off from the world, fed continuously, entertained constantly, with no decisions to make beyond what time to show up for dinner, that experience is, for a very specific kind of person, basically a drug.
And your business is the dealer. So where does all of this leave you? You borrowed $1 billion to build the ship. You're spending somewhere between $300 and $700 million a year operating it. Your revenue, tickets, drinks, gambling, excursions, the whole machine comes in at somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion, depending on your occupancy rate, your routes, and how aggressively your onboard retail team can get 4,000 slightly drunk people to buy oil paintings. The margins in a good year are somewhere between 15 and 25%. On a $1 billion revenue ship, that's $150 to $250 million in profit per year per ship. Carnival operates 90 ships. Royal Caribbean
operates 65. You start to see how this works. But there's one more thing you need to know. One thing the cruise lines don't put in the brochure. One thing that has followed this industry for decades. And that, if you're paying attention, should make you slightly uncomfortable with how good the economics are.
Cruise ships are registered in countries like the Bahamas, Panama, and Liberia. Not because those countries have particularly good shipbuilding infrastructure or particularly enthusiastic cruise passengers, but because registering a ship in the Bahamas means it operates under Bahamian law, which means it pays Bahamian taxes, which means a company generating $20 billion a year in revenue pays an effective tax rate that consumer advocates have estimated at somewhere close to 0%. Carnival Corporation, in multiple years of extraordinary profitability, paid less in federal income tax than a school teacher. This is legal. It has been legal for decades. It is the reason the economics of owning a cruise ship are as good as they are, because the costs that would make any other business marginal simply don't apply. The fuel tax exemptions, the labor law exemptions, the environmental regulation exemptions. Cruise ships were, for decades, legally dumping treated waste directly into the ocean, and several lines have paid enormous fines for dumping untreated waste.
When they thought nobody was watching, the business works in part because it has spent a century building a legal structure specifically designed to make it work. The ocean is international. The ship is registered somewhere small. The money lands somewhere convenient. And you, the owner, sitting in your office in Miami or London or Nassau, counting your $250 million a year in profit per ship, are operating completely within the rules of a game you didn't write, but are very glad exists. So here is what you actually bought. You bought a floating city that you fill with people who paid to be locked inside it. You make money on every drink they drink, every bet they place, every photograph they take, every island they visit, every painting they inexplicably purchase at 2 a.m. because the auctioneer was very charming and the champagne was free.
You operate under a legal structure that minimizes your taxes, your labor obligations, and your environmental accountability to a degree that would be impossible on land. You survive a global pandemic that killed your revenue for 15 months, and your customers come back. And when it works, when the ship is full and the sea is calm, and 4,000 people are spending money on things they wouldn't buy anywhere else, there is almost no business on Earth that generates cash the way a cruise ship does. The question isn't whether the economics work. The question is whether you can sleep at night, knowing exactly how they work. That part is up to you.